There we go. Aloha. Welcome to This Week in Travel History. I am the host, John DeLeva. And twice a week, what I'll be doing is finding profound moments in amazing trips taken by interesting people. And I have a very interesting one as a guest today, John Binkley. He is an entrepreneur, he is a politician, he is a business creator, and he's a third generation boat captain. But more important than all that, well, maybe I shouldn't say more important, but what brings him on the show today, what we're going to focus on today, is an amazing trip he did. And that was a motorcycle ride from the top of Alaska to the bottom of Argentina back in the winter of 1976. 2 wheels, temperature 60 below zero, 18,000 plus miles. John, let me give it to you to take over a little. And why the heck did you do something like this for starters?
Well, top of the morning to you, John. And as we say in the Yupik culture, chamai, which is similar to aloha, a welcome and a greeting. But it's fun to look back at it, John, and think about the trip. It really was probably inspired early on, when I can remember maybe in my early teens reading in the local newspaper about somebody from Germany, I think, that drove a Volkswagen bus all the way from Tierra del Fuego up to Fairbanks. They were going on to the Yukon River, which is as far as north as you could drive in this hemisphere. And I thought that was an incredible journey. And then back to the fall of 1975, during the construction of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, which was a large pipeline to get to the oil fields on the Arctic Ocean down to ice-free tidewater at Valdez. And in the course of building that, they built a road then from the Yukon River north to the Arctic Ocean. So the fall, I think it was October of 1975, they completed the bridge across the Yukon River. And now you could drive all the way to the Arctic Ocean. So I thought about that and wanted to be the first one, be an Alaskan that drove from the Arctic Ocean all the way to the tip of South America, rather than waiting for somebody to drive from there up to Prudhoe Bay. So that was kind of the genesis of it.
Wow. So you're living in Fairbanks at the time, which is where you still are today. You're planning this trip out. You're doing it in the winter because you've got summer work. You've got to get back to the family business. It's 18,000 miles. A couple times along the way, did you shake your head at yourself and say, what the heck did I get into?
Well, I didn't think of it as 18,000 miles. I didn't think of it. I didn't think of all the problems, all the difficulties I would have along the way, all the challenges. I just thought of the fun it would be to take my motorcycle and drive to the other end of the earth, to the globe. And the only time that was convenient, two things. One, I wanted to be the first, so I had to get with it because it was just built. And two, as you point out, our family has stern wheel riverboats that we operate. I'm a riverboat captain, as all my predecessors, my father and grandfather were. And so I had to do it in the winter. I had to work in the summertime. So I started first with the process of trying to get permission to get on the road because it was privately owned. It wasn't a public highway. And so I had to get permission from the oil companies, which owned the road, to use that section between the Arctic Ocean, Prudhoe Bay, and the Yukon River. And that took some time between October and when I finally left from Prudhoe Bay on December 2nd. So I was waiting for permission. And in the meantime, I started to test because the temperature was getting colder and colder and colder as we went from October into November and into the 1st of December. So I would test to find out how I could get traction in the motorcycle, to make sure I could pull some of the steep grades on the icy roads, how I could stay upright, how I could cope with the cold, both personally and for my motorcycle, and many the other challenges. So I was practicing until I finally took off.
You know, you and I met on a plane on a flight from Seattle to Fairbanks a couple of years ago, and talked about this a little bit. And one of the things I think I recall you saying is you had to wear goggles and breathe through a snorkel because it was so cold. Did that happen part of the way?
I did. It was such a challenge. There were many, many challenges. That was one of them. Of course, you have to protect yourself. You're going typically 40 miles an hour. At one point, I went up to 60 miles an hour when it was actually 65 below, just to calculate what the wind chill might be at that. But you have to protect yourself. And of course, in that portion, I had a full-faced helmet and I had a shield that came down. And so I fashioned in that some foam with some baling wire taped in it that it came tightly across the bridge of my nose and my cheekbones to seal off any moisture from getting up into where the shield would be. And then to get rid of the moisture from my breath, I had a snorkel that came out behind my helmet. So I would inhale through my nose and then exhale through the snorkel so that the moisture would get out and it wouldn't freeze up my shield and I could see where I was going.
You make me think of two people, MacGyver and Evel Knievel. And so this show is called This Week in Travel History, and I'm focusing in on particular profound moments in a week of these amazing trips. In yours, it really felt like the week of February, the first week of February, had two significant events. The first began with an unfortunate crash, but in a way, it turned out to be a fortunate break for you. Could you tell me a little about what happened in southern Mexico and then a couple days later?
It was indeed. And, I went most of the way solo. There was a small stretch that I met up with a friend from Fairbanks who happened to be in Arizona for the winter on a motorcycle. We met in Arizona, went down through the border to Mexico City. We were traveling north out of Mexico City up into the mountains because there was a beautiful road that went from there out towards the coast. A lot of mountains and a lot of deep ravines and very windy, twisty roads, which is just great fun for motorcycle riders. Yeah. So, and you're fairly reasonable when you're riding by yourself on a motorcycle. When you get together with another motorcycle, particularly someone you've competed with in motorcycle racing,
right?
The level goes way up, and we, found ourselves, just going terribly too fast in so many different stretches of road. And that was the case in these mountainous roads. I was behind, trying to keep up with him. It was early in the morning and our tires were still cold and not a lot of good traction. Through the mountains, going way too fast. One hard left-hander, no guardrails in those areas. I could tell I was dragging a bar that I had to protect my cylinders and my tailpipe. Wasn't going to make the corner. Went off, got upright onto the shoulder, got control of the bike. The shoulder was ending and hooking back into another right-hand turn, so I had to get back up. Went to get back up, and all of a sudden I found myself flying through the air. Head over tails, very steep ravines. I came to land. The motorcycle hit a large boulder that was there, and that stopped the motorcycle. I flew farther, landed flat on my back, with my legs hanging over from my knees, a precipitous drop that probably would have killed me. And I was flat on my back, and that's where I came to rest. And so I was very, very lucky that I just didn't go another foot, and I would have been over the edge, and who knows what would have happened. But so anyhow, that crashed.
Very lucky there, but then very lucky you were in a hospital a couple days later.
Yes, so they took me, a gentleman who had an ice business was traveling from one town to another, took me to the hospital in a small town called Huachinango. And they put me in the hospital there, put me in a cast, and long story about that. Nobody spoke English, and my Spanish wasn't very good. Got the cast on the wrong leg initially, and recasted it. But on February 4th, early that morning, I was in the hospital and recuperating from my injuries. And there was a massive earthquake in Guatemala. And that's where we were headed. We were headed for Guatemala. And had I not crashed, I would have probably been right in Guatemala City, which was our destination, when that quake happened. It was tremendously destructive. There were, I believe, over 100,000 casualties, 23,000 of those dead, 77,000 injured. So it was, as you said, it was actually fortunate as it turned out that I was safe in a hospital rather than in the midst of all that destruction in Guatemala.
You healed, you headed south, and you ultimately made it to Ushuaia. Is that how you say it in Argentina? The town
Ushuaia.
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 Okay.
Ushuaia.
And you took your helmet off and you looked around, and what did you say? What did you say to yourself, or what did you think at the end of the road?
To be honest with you, John, it was very anticlimactic. I mean, it wasn't as, I just get some euphoria or some epiphany when I made it there. It was a grind in the end. It has been delayed for several different things, like the broken or the injury I had in Mexico and other side trips that I took. And I had to get back to work on the riverboats in the spring, and this was late April. And so I had to crank. I mean, I was from Buenos Aires down to Ushuaia, man, I was moving. And it was, 16, 18 hours a day on the bike. It was brutal over tough roads, tough conditions. And I left in the cold and I ended in the cold. There was actually snow late April, which is their fall, going into winter in Ushuaia. And I had to go through one pass before I came down in there, and there was snow, and it was very cold again. And so it was a relief, really, when I got there, I would say, more than anything.
So this is 45th anniversary coming up of this amazing trip. And naturally, you've had a wonderful career. You've beautiful family. You've raised 4 kids. You've got multiple things you've accomplished in your career. How much of what you became, would you say, was influenced by the trip, by things that you experienced on that crazy trip?
It had just a massive impact on my life. And for months, years even, I would think about it every day. There would be some experience that would come back to my memory. It was just a phenomenal experience. But more than anything, it taught me that if you have a large undertaking or a large task, you just have to break it down in sections. And that's the attitude that I took. I just took it 1 mile at a time. I knew there were going to be challenges. If I had a thought of the whole thing and all the challenges, I might never ever gone, but I just took it 1 mile at a time. Whatever came up, I figured it out, got around it, overcame those challenges, and went on to the next mile. And you do that 18,264 times, and finally you end up at your goal. So it really taught me to break things down like that, and eventually you can do tremendous things.
Well put. Since we're talking about numbers here, did I see it was 42 days, 4 hours and 5 minutes? Was something?
It was
like
142.
142 days, 4 hours, 5 minutes.
And I had a lot of time to think. In those days, no earpods or AirPods, no music. You just think for 16, 18 hours a day on a bike by yourself in your helmet, in your little bubble, thinking about things.
And at least
that in itself was a trip.
You'd have to worry about stopping and doing all your social media posts too. You had a lot of freedom you owned each day. John, this is fantastic. I greatly appreciate you sharing. You're the first guest on a show that we're going to be doing twice a week, every Monday, every Friday. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk today. I mean, amazing trip, and you've really built a wonderful life for yourself. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Been a privilege to be with you on this show, John. I'll look forward to seeing many more from you.
I'll say aloha, and I do hope we can get together sometime this year, John. Cheers.
Okay. Jamai from Alaska.